And welcome to the first official episode of the College Try, the college football betting podcast on Cooper Sports. I'm Matt Lacerre here with Wyatt. Since it's the first time, or the first official one, we're just going to introduce ourselves, give you some background. Like I said, I'm Matt Lacerre. I am a huge Florida State fan. I am currently a student for another 2 weeks or something like that. And if I bet on the Noles, I probably wouldn't take that advice because I'm always going with Noles spread or Noles money line, one of the two. Wyatt, what about you?
Yeah, so I've been in the betting world a little bit, kind of have a little following on social medias as known as worst bets. So that's how you know what my betting advice is. I'm currently living in Washington, D.C., but I am from Michigan. So I'm a huge Michigan sports fan. As you can see with all my attire, it's a great time to be a Wolverine. But yeah, it's good to be on here. Good to talk college football. We're winding down the season. So let's get into it.
Yeah, so before we get into the rankings that just came out, for full disclosure, we're recording this Tuesday. It's about 7:45 p.m., so the rankings just came out less than a half hour ago. Before we get into those, we're just going to recap some of the games that got us there. Not many games to recap this week, just because a lot of teams do a little tune-up game or an FCS game, group of five, whatever, before they get to their rivals. So a lot of beatdowns this week, but the best game that was probably on was to me, it was USC UCLA, where USC just took control, and they finally, for the first time, kind of nationally showcased themselves as a good team. We haven't seen that much this year, and now people are talking and how they have a clear path to the playoff. What do you think there, Wyatt?
Yeah, I was waiting for this game. USC had that close loss to Utah, and then they still, week 11 last week, they had yet to have a win over a ranked opponent. So I was kind of waiting for this game just to see how they would do. I obviously watched them against Utah. They lost by 1 point, whatever that happens in college football. It's not that big of a deal to lose by one, but they're resilient. They won 48-45, and Williams, I believe, threw for 470 yards, and we'll get into Heisman talk a little bit, but he just became the front runner out of nowhere. So if you place that future back when he was, plus 1,000 or whatever to win the Heisman, you're probably feeling pretty lucky. But, USC put themselves in a great spot and a big win at UCLA. So they set themselves up nicely for this big week against Notre Dame.
Yeah. I think, if they win that game, I think they control their own destiny at this point. Again, they're ranked at 6 right now behind LSU. Georgia, LSU will have to face off, and Ohio State, Michigan have to face off. So right now, they're looking pretty if they win out. My other games I had were TCU, Baylor, and Tennessee, South Carolina. TCU kind of did struggle with Baylor, only winning by 1 on that last-second field goal. It kind of worries me a little bit when it comes to the Big 12 championship game, because they're going to have to play a team they already played. And it's hard to beat a team twice in college football in 1 year. This isn't the NFL. It's different. Hard to win. It's hard to win twice in both, but I think it's even harder in college. You're looking at you think it's Kansas State or Texas. I think if they get Texas, you're looking a lot better. But Kansas State, I don't know if they can win that game, because, again, all their come from behinds. They haven't really – Texas is the only game where they've really had the control of the game the full time. What do you think there?
Yeah, I'm still waiting for TCU to fall off. I still can't believe that they're 11-0 right now. I don't know how many weeks in a row they've squeaked by. They, ran a run play with 17 seconds left in the game. I have no idea the thought process of that, but then quickly ran out their field goal team, kicked the field goal as time expired to, top Baylor. But I'll get into it later with this TCU team. Yes, they're 11-0, but I'll get into it in a little bit. I don't think they're going to be here at the end of the year. There's just too much on their plate. Obviously, next week's not going to be that big of a deal, but when they start playing in that Big 12 championship game, whether it is K-State or Texas, I just think they can't keep doing this. Sooner or later, it's going to catch them in the butt, and they will fall a game. And as soon as they do that, they're just going to be out. But yeah, as a Michigan fan, I really need them to lose just to give me a little bit of leeway, and I keep waiting for it, and they keep screwing me every single week. It's unbelievable.
Hey, but the Baylor spread did hit. You got that one
plus 2.5. I know that weird line Vegas knows. I don't know.
So obviously, then the big upset of the week was South Carolina over Tennessee. I liked South Carolina. I like the atmosphere. I like Sandstorm and all that. So I was kind of happy when they won. Just kind of sucks that Hendon Hooker's out. It probably ruins his Heisman chances, even though I thought he was a front runner up until this week. South Carolina looked really good. They could even give Clemson a run for their money this week.
Yeah, I hate seeing a Heisman candidate go down. Michigan, we had that scare with Blake Corum. It's still undisclosed what actually happened to his knee and if he's going to be good to go. But it is confirmed that Hendon Hooker tore his ACL. Extremely unfortunate. He had a great year. He almost solely got Tennessee to where they are. So it's just heartbreaking to see him, get injured this late in the season. But, hats off to South Carolina. They looked really good, putting up 63 points. I think that was the first since like 1970 against Tennessee. But yeah, really good win. Bad for Tennessee. They fell to, I believe they're 10th now, completely out of contention. Was really shocked that was going to happen. Is that going through all of our lists last week, this was not something that any of us predicted. And now, it opens up the field for a USC or for a Clemson or for a, an LSU possibility. So opens up the field quite a bit. I'll add one more thing of the recap. Those top four teams, Michigan, Ohio State, Georgia, and TCU all won last week by a combined 26 points, which is the lowest by 20 total points in the playoff history.
Yeah.
So it's unreal that all these undefeated teams squeaked by. Georgia won 16-6. Michigan won 19-17. Ohio State won 43-30, which actually should have been 36-30. They got a pick six as time expired. And then TCU wins by 1. So it was they all got the win, but it was, as a Michigan fan, I was sweating that whole game. I'm sure Georgia fans, Ohio State fans, TCU fans were doing the same exact thing. So as boring of a weekend it was in regards to matchups, it was pretty exciting in regards to just close games on those undefeated teams.
And the good part about that is maybe this year in the semifinals, we won't have blowouts, right? I feel like every year in the semifinals, it's whatever SEC team's playing just blows the other team out. Maybe that's a sign this year we finally won't have that. We'll finally have close games, which is very, very possible no matter what. But now that we've kind of recapped everything, we'll go into the rankings. Obviously, the top four stayed the same. Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, TCU, and then LSU moved up to 5 after that Tennessee loss, USC at 6, Bama 7, Clemson 8, Oregon 9. In my opinion, everyone has a chance up until Clemson. Bama, I don't think Bama will get in. I think Clemson has a better chance than Bama, which is funny because last week when we were talking, I said Clemson probably had no chance, but that's what this Tennessee loss does, is it opens up so much, because if USC falls off, LSU loses, which is pretty likely to Georgia, and you have Clemson sitting there as a one-loss conference champion, it's kind of hard to not put them above Bama, right? In my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. I have my list of eligible teams, and it is that top 7 that you just said. I have Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, TCU, LSU, USC, and Clemson. And, on that college football, the ranking show that just happened 50 minutes ago, all those 4 analysts were saying that Bama's completely out of it. I think Bama, if there's a couple losses, they can come back in contention for that number 4 spot, and something that we did not ever see at all this year happening. But with just a couple losses and a couple more losses, if a TCU and LSU and USC loses, then it comes really interesting to see what they're going to do for that 4 spot, whether it's Bama, Clemson, or that Michigan, Ohio State loser. So it's a small chance, but Bama's back in talks, which kind of sucks to say, but it's true.
Yeah, they are. Again, I think there's still more on the outside looking in, but how much is their combined losses by? 2 points, 2 or 3 points to 2 really good teams? I mean, like you said it earlier with USC's loss to Utah, it's a 1-point loss. It's not that bad. And it's also, we're talking about Alabama here. You can't tell me the committee doesn't love Alabama, that they don't love the SEC. They probably, out of those teams that'll be competing for that 4 spot in all chaos scenario now, they'll have the best strength of schedule by far.
For sure.
I mean, and we've seen throughout these rankings that the committee really takes that into account. That's probably the only reason why they're 1 above Clemson right now. I mean, the scenarios they're getting crazier, but not as many in my opinion now. It's kind of there's a lot more clear paths.
besides the Michigan Ohio State game this weekend, nothing's going to be too crazy. I don't imagine any of these schools losing. Hopefully TCU does, but we'll see. USC has their hands full of Notre Dame. Clemson has just became a really interesting game with this the South Carolina team to see if they're actually gonna, maybe it was just a fluke or maybe they're actually decent. So that'll be an interesting game. But besides those couple, I really don't see a whole lot of, crazy things happening. But it'll more come to play when it comes to conference championship week, when in 2 weeks, where we actually see the biggest, scenarios of what's actually going to happen. Because if one of these conference championship teams loses, like say, Clemson loses the ACC, USC loses the Pac-12, LSU beats Georgia, then, we're getting into chaos. But I think we still have one more week until all hell actually breaks loose.
Yeah, so just because you said it, we can go into conference championship games. I kind of made my predictions of who it's going to be. I just wasn't sure who won the other side of the Big Ten, other than was it Iowa?
So it's currently right now Iowa and Purdue are tied. They do not play each other this week, but Iowa does hold the tiebreaker. So if both teams win, and they're playing no one, I think Iowa's playing Nebraska and Purdue, I believe, is playing Indiana. So they both should win, which would mean somehow, I don't know how Iowa's making it back to the conference championship after scoring 9 points a game. But yeah, it's looking like Iowa's going to be on the other side of the Big Ten.
I mean, it doesn't really matter, to be honest. Ohio State or Michigan will probably beat either of them. Like, it's the Big Ten, just that side of the Big Ten is just absolutely dog shit, in my opinion. But I don't think many people disagree with that. For Big 12, though, my most interesting one was Big 12. I had Kansas State making it and playing TCU, obviously. And I think Kansas State would win that game just because, I know they were beating TCU at one point when they were playing probably by 30. There's no way they haven't learned from that already and pushing on the pedal. I mean, then they came back and beat Oklahoma State by like 40. So I just think Kansas State will come out as your Big 12 champion, and that's your TCU loss. TCU plays Iowa State this week. That should be pretty easy. They're not good this year. Matt Campbell's having his down year. I don't think TCU wins the Big 12, and I think a lot of people are starting to think that too, especially like we already said, how they struggled with Baylor. My other big game, the other ones like ACC, Clemson should beat North Carolina. SEC, UGA should win. I do think right now the line for that is plus 15 LSU. I probably would take LSU to cover there just because it's an SEC championship game. LSU's been good. You never know what's going to happen. But the closest game would probably be Oregon, USC in the Pac-12 championship.
Right. Yeah. Oregon currently is in a 1-loss spot. Washington's right behind them in 2 losses. If Oregon does lose to Oregon State, I believe Oregon and Utah's in there. So Oregon has 1 loss. Washington and Utah both have 2 losses. I believe Oregon holds the tiebreaker against both of those.
Yeah.
So I don't know why Oregon is not automatically in it yet, but I guess maybe if USC loses. But yeah, it should be USC Oregon in the Pac-12 championship. And I honestly would love, I think Oregon wins that game by.
That's what I wrote down USC, but I think Oregon could easily win that. Like, that's a toss-up for me, complete toss-up. Honestly, I have no clue. I would have to look more into it, but I just did USC off the eye test from this past week personally. But Oregon could definitely win that game, and then we're looking at the scenario we said before where Clemson, Ohio State, Michigan loser, or where was the other one there? Or like a Bama or something like that, right? And I mean, I don't think we're too far-fetched from having an Oregon Pac-12 championship. They're a good team. Who are their losses to? Lost to Georgia at the beginning of the year. Who cares about that? Beginning of the year is you're learning. And what was the other one again? They had a big upset. Washington.
They had one last week. I completely
Washington.
who it was.
Should have been Washington, I believe.
Yeah. They lost to Washington at Washington. So.
Yeah.
Or out. Yeah. So Washington does hold a tiebreaker over Oregon. That makes sense. So That's why Oregon isn't automatically in. Because if Oregon loses and Washington wins and Washington goes in, but I believe Oregon does hold the tiebreaker over Utah because of that win last week.
And Oregon State, Oregon State's still a good team. They just got in the rankings today. I don't know what they're ranked, but I know
23. Yep.
23. Yep. They just got in the rankings. Like, they've been a sneaky good team. They could just play spoiler here. I don't know much about them because obviously, I mean, who does know anything about Oregon State? I don't think your
mascot's a beaver. No one really pays attention.
No. So I mean, they're a good team. I'd be surprised if they lost, but I mean, I have all trust in Bo Nix. I love Bo Nix this year. He's been doing great. He brought Chick-fil-A to Eugene, Oregon with a truck. So let's get into some other games here. We'll get right into the big one, and you'll be able to talk a lot about this. Michigan versus Ohio State. The biggest thing for me here is if Corum's playing or not. I mean, cold weather, you're going to have to rely a lot more on the run, which should help in Michigan's favor if Corum's in.
Right. Yeah. The line right now is sitting at 7.5. And I know, that Michigan usually gets in trouble for not disclosing their injuries. And I think they have to be more transparent now just because of betting wise, which sounds terrible, but I think it's actually like a rule. You have to disclose like your guys who are playing, like I believe it's on Wednesday or Thursday. So it should be interesting what Corum's status is going to be. Obviously, if Corum is out, Michigan in that second half last week without Corum looked absolutely miserable. Besides a run game, which is great. If they don't have Corum, if they don't have Edwards, who is your second stringer, who was also out last week, they're in a world of hurt. And I love Ohio State in that matchup. However, if Corum's playing, it's a complete game changer.
Yep.
If Corum's in, I think Michigan State wins this pretty easy, very similar to last year. I know this is kind of a hot take, but Michigan, their run game is debatably better than last year. And Ohio State looks a lot more beatable than they did last year. Last year, Ohio State was on top of the world with all those wide receivers. It didn't look like they could get stopped, and Michigan ends up winning by whatever it was, 15 points. So I think if with a healthy Corum, I think Michigan takes this game by 10 points.
I have to agree with you. Again, like I said, it's just in cold weather games, at least this is my opinion, living in the South, it's you got to rely on the run. If you don't have Corum there, it's a complete game changer both ways. Like if Corum's not there, Ohio State's probably winning by 10 to 20. If Corum's there, Michigan's winning by 10 to 20. And like we said too, if Corum plays, that's a big Heisman implication game, because if Stroud can't throw the ball because it's cold or anything like that, and Corum's out, just give Caleb Williams the Heisman now, in my opinion. But yeah, I completely agree with you there. We'll move to a game we probably won't talk about for too long, but a game we didn't think would have New Year's Six Bowl implications after Tulane played UCF. But since UCF lost to Navy this weekend, Tulane-Cincinnati actually can mean a lot for who gets that group of 5 spot. Right now, Cincinnati is actually -2, I believe, which is kind of surprising. I like Tulane. They beat the shit out of SMU last week. I don't know much about either team, their American Conference, but what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to have to lean Cincy in this one. Just Cincy's, history in the last couple of years with, they have a great coach, and I just think their experience and their players and I just think they're just a better team than Tulane. Tulane's had a great year. Hats off to them. They've came out of nowhere. I believe they had like 2 or 3 wins last year. So the fact that they're 9-2 right now is unbelievable. And they have a lot of momentum, which is really hard to bet against. But I'm just going to have to take my experience, and Cincy honestly just has the better players.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to lean Cincy in this one.
I have no reason for picking Tulane. I just bet against them last week and got absolutely demolished. So, I've done it with TCU multiple times, but I guess I'm trying to change have a change of heart in doing that sometimes. This one's not that big, but it has implications for the Big 12 championship. Kansas versus Kansas State. Kansas State is currently an 11.5-point favorite. Kansas has not been the same since their quarterback went down against, I believe, TCU when they were undefeated. They are bowl eligible though, so everyone there is happy because that just doesn't happen up there in Lawrence. I don't see any way Kansas State loses this game. Now it's a rivalry game, so I would pick KU to cover. But other than that, I just don't see a way Kansas State loses this game.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's no way they lose this game with everything on the line, with a shot at the Big 12 championship. There's no way they lose. But 11.5-point favorite against a huge rivalry is that never usually happens. So I'm going to go with you and then go Kansas plus 11.5 in that game. It's just too many points.
And then back over to an ACC SEC rivalry, South Carolina versus Clemson. We touched on it a little bit already. And Clemson right now, the line is 14.5 in favor of them. When South Carolina looks good, this game's also in Death Valley, which is a very hard place to play. I'm going to take South Carolina plus 14.5. I think Clemson will win, but I have a feeling it'll be close. I would not be surprised, though, if Clemson blows them out, just because South Carolina's sitting there at an emotional hangover after the Tennessee game. But Spencer Rattler looked amazing last week, so it's hard to bet against it.
Yeah, if you told me this line this line in this game before the Tennessee game, I would have taken Clemson any single day of the week. But after that performance in Tennessee, it just, it's 14.5 points is a lot after a team that just put 63 points up against a fifth ranked team in the country. So as much as I don't really like Rattler, as much as I don't like South Carolina, I'm hoping they win. I'm hoping they at least cover. And I like South Carolina minus 14.5 in that, or plus 14.5 in that game.
Agree with you there. This is an interesting one. The Iron Bowl, obviously Alabama's going to win it, but will they cover the 22? That's the question. I think I'm looking more on that rather than if they actually win the game. It's in Tuscaloosa. Auburn's looked like shit. They don't have a real coach right now. I mean, they looked better ever since they fired Haskins, but you think they can cover the 22?
So here's my whole thought process. And again, we've talked on it the last couple of weeks. I've got screwed on Alabama spread 3 weeks in a row now. I've gotten them against, or 3 of the last times I bet them. I bet them against Tennessee spread. I bet them LSU spread, and I bet them Ole Miss spread. All 3 lost horribly. They actually beat Ole Miss, but they won by 5. The spread was, 12.5. 22 Auburn is dog shit. They're terrible. They have no coach. The players don't want to be there anymore, but it is the Iron Bowl. As much as they want to hate their coach and hate their program, they hate Alabama more. And it's going to be the Iron Bowl, watching that, the kick 6 in 2013, the greatest play, I think, in history of college football. It's tough to take Alabama with that many points, but I'm going to live and die by Bama. I have to end the season off strong. I can't go 0-4 on Alabama spreads. So I'm going to take Alabama minus 22.
I kind of agree with you there. I just think the difference for me is if it was at Auburn, I would take Auburn plus 22 all day. But since it's in Tuscaloosa, I think it's just going to be a blowout. But again, we'll probably be proven wrong. I think over the past 3 weeks, we've realized that enough just by doing this podcast. A few more games. I'll talk more about this one. UF versus FSU. I'm currently on vacation right now, but I'm driving back 6 hours right after Thanksgiving dinner to make it to the game on Friday. I think FSU will cover the 9.5. UF, they just lost to Vanderbilt. There's not much explaining to do there. They just suck, and I'm biased. I'll admit I'm biased, very biased. But Jordan Travis looks great. FSU is beating the hell out of teams. 200 yards rushing in each of the past 6 games by the whole running back room altogether. Trey Benson is leading that. The only worry I have for that is I was looking at just rankings is that FSU actually has the 4th most passing yards given up this year, and UF has I don't know where I was going with that, but UF is not bad passing the ball. So that's my only worry with this game, but FSU could also just run it down their throat because UF has an awful rush defense. I think FSU covers the 9.5. What do you think?
Yeah, so obviously you're a Florida State fan. Go to Florida State. I don't know a whole lot about these teams. I do know Florida State, they did beat LSU to start the season off, so we have to remember that game. They've worked their way up to 16th in the college football playoff rankings now, so they're no joke. Florida started the season off good, died, came back a little, and then just completely died last week against Vandy. So this Florida team, I don't trust them at all. I'm going to go with the hot team. I don't know how many Florida States won in the row, but they look good to me. So I'm just going to go with the hot team. And Florida, you can't bet on them with all their inconsistencies. So I like Florida State 9.5 in that game.
Let's go. I like it. You got any more games you want to talk about? There's the Egg Bowl.
We'll quickly, I think we already touched on it a little bit, but probably the 3rd biggest rivalry in college football, in my opinion, besides Michigan, Ohio State, the Iron Bowl. Then I do think Notre Dame, USC is right up there with some of the best. This is going to be a really interesting game. USC is currently a 5.5 point favorite at home. I honestly have no idea which way to lean in this game. I'm obviously going to be rooting for Notre Dame. But I've flip-flopped so many times on this game. I think Notre Dame can keep it close. I think USC could also win by 4 touchdowns. So I'll probably honestly just stay away from this game. If anything, I'll lean the over at 64.5, which is disgusting in a Notre Dame game. But that's kind of where I'm leaning. I honestly have no idea what direction this game is going to go.
Neither do I. Notre Dame has been not as inconsistent as it gets this year, but they started off so bad, and now all of a sudden everyone's giving them all the praise in the world. I feel like half of that's because a lot of teams have that one loss where Clemson's one loss to Notre Dame, trying to make them look a little better. But
right.
I couldn't. Is it at USC?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, then I'll take USC to cover. I think home field advantage does wonders in college football more than any other sport. Notre Dame, if you're playing in South Bend, I would say give me Notre Dame, but I like USC. Caleb Williams looks good. I grew up a Pitt fan, so I hate Jordan Addison right now. But the whole team is just stacked, and it's finally great to see him get that national exposure we've been waiting for. And I said it last week when we were talking, just no one was talking about them until now this UCLA game, and they're all back in the mix, and everyone loves to talk about them. Don't forget, this was the team everyone was talking about this offseason because of Lincoln Riley, all the transfer moves, and that's why I like them. I don't have a reason why I like them. I just like them to win this game. Again, Caleb Williams is hot. They're looking hot right now. I'll take USC -5, especially because it's at home. Yeah, at home does wonders in college football.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah. So any other games that you want to touch on? I think we've covered all the big ones.
Yeah, it's an ugly game, and you said about it. Iowa State's not as good as they have been in years past, but against this TCU team, Iowa State has a great defense. I think 10 points is currently, I think that's very fair for TCU to win by 10 points. They'll probably win by more, but just because of Iowa State's defense, I think this game will be more interesting than people are giving it. Than people are thinking it's going to happen. So I think the game's going to stay close. I can see it, getting past 10 at the end of the game, but I'm excited just to see how Iowa State competes. And again, I'm rooting for all the upsets this week besides Michigan. So we'll be rooting my ass off for the Cyclones to top off the Horned Frogs.
We'll see. I mean, they probably won't, but
yeah, there's no chance.
No. What's Iowa State's record in this year? They've just normally Matt Campbell is like one of the offensive.
Yeah, I believe they're 4-7 right now.
So they're fighting for that. No, they can't even get in a bowl.
Yeah, they're done.
Yeah, they're done. Damn, that sucks. What happened to Matt Campbell this year?
I don't know.
So with that, we can transfer over into the Heisman race, which we touched on a little bit. Last week, we talked a lot about how it was going to be Stroud versus Corum, and this game would decide it. Obviously, that could change depending on whether or not Corum's in. My thing, and I said it earlier, if Corum's out, Hooker's out of the race altogether now. That lost South Carolina injured. I don't think he's winning it. He's probably not even getting to New York, in my opinion. It'll probably be 3 there, Corum, Stroud, and Caleb Williams. I like Caleb Williams right now. Again, it just depends on if Corum's out or not.
Right. Yeah, I looked up the odds today on FanDuel. Williams is now he's -130, the favorite by far. CJ Stroud's at +110. And I made a stupid play and I put $50 on Corum +2,500. My thought process is it's a huge risk because obviously we don't know if he's going to play. If he does play, is he going to be 100% healthy? Probably not. But if Michigan wins that game, if USC somehow falls and Caleb Williams has a bad game, then I think Corum right there is, it's at +2,500. That's just too good of odds to take to think, if he wins that game. And if say he scored, 180 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, he's very much in alive as now the favorite, so, or depending what Williams does, which I think, USC is either going to struggle against Notre Dame or struggle against, the Pac-12 championship. So it's taking a risk. I honestly, if I would take money right now, I would put it on Williams just because I think, no one makes that jump in the Heisman that fast, that late in the year. So, his 470 passing yards last week was crazy. Stroud's going to have, his tough game against Michigan. Corum, is half injured. So if I were to bet on a person besides Corum, I would take Williams hands down. I think he's probably going to walk away with it, which pisses me off because I have no idea where this came from. But yeah, I guess he's the favorite now. So
I mean, it's just he finally got on national TV is the only thing I can say really. And he still has. I mean, and I've said this to you before. I love the Heisman moments. I think that's what really makes the Heisman candidate the Heisman winner. A lot of times, the past few years past, we've kind of been missing that. And it just doesn't feel like a true Heisman winner when that doesn't happen. Williams not only had one against UCLA, he has a chance to have another against Notre Dame and a chance to have another against their opponent's going to be fairly highly ranked in the Pac-12 championship. So he has those chances. Again, this Ohio State-Michigan game has the chance to have all of them, in my opinion.
Right.
So again, I'll keep saying it. Corum, I would rather have Corum win than Stroud. I'm with you. I just hate Ohio State. I don't have a reason for it. I just don't like them. But I don't want Stroud to win. I just don't want it to happen. I think Ohio State fans are annoying on Twitter and all that kind of stuff. I want Corum, if not Williams. That was Drake May did
I
he have
didn't
better
see
odds
him
than
on the list. That
yeah,
loss against
probably
Georgia Tech
yeah
is almost
probably
unexplainable.
yeah
But he's probably up down there somewhere. I didn't even look.
yeah I don't
I
know.
think
I
you
mean
had to scroll another page.
that's a big jump from Stroud at plus 110 to Corum at plus 2,500.
It's which is unreal, which is why I had to take it. Cause it's honestly, if he has a decent game and beats Ohio State, he's very much in contention with Caleb Williams. So it's just too good of odds. There's a reason the odds are that bad, because obviously, they know, but I had to put some money on it. And I'll have a very nice day if that wins.
It will be. I mean, it all depends. It all comes down to this game, like all season everyone's been talking about. Everything in the Big Ten just comes down to this one game. And it seems to happen every year now. This year just feels different than others. So after that, there's been some more coaching rumors going around, a lot with Auburn. There's been talks of Lane Kiffin to Auburn, which Lane Kiffin quickly shot down in a hilarious way on Twitter. And then there's rumors that Dabo Swinney's camp is talking to Auburn. I don't think either of them go. I think Auburn has no clue right now where they're going in their coaching search. They're just trying to get all these rumors out there to make themselves look good. What do you think there?
Yeah, we talked about it last week. Ole Miss to Auburn, I don't really see a huge jump in. Like, it's not like you're going from, Rutgers to Penn State. It's not like that kind of jump. I think they're two very similar schools. Obviously, they'll never be in Alabama as long as Saban's there. So to me, it just didn't make sense for him to go from Ole Miss to Auburn. I didn't really see that one happening. And then in regards to the Clemson camp, I think there's going to be some stuff coming out this offseason of Dabo. I know people have their different thoughts on him. I think the guy's a complete asshole, and maybe some of his assistant coaches are starting to see that, or, they're just obviously, when you get paid the big bucks, you can leave camp and they can leave on good notes. And it's not like that, but I think some people are starting to get a little pissed off with Dabo. So I could see that happening. I don't know if they would be front runners though for that Auburn job. There's, great coaches out there that I think are better than an assistant at Clemson. So I have no idea what's going to happen there. It's probably the biggest opening right now in football, just because the SEC, with their history as well. So it will be interesting to see who they bring in, and they will have to do that pretty quickly with recruiting season coming up. No recruit wants to go to a school without, a head coach. So they'll have to jump on this quickly. I honestly don't think either of those is going to be it, like you said, and I have no idea who's going to be. So it could be an NFL guy coming down. It could be, who knows? So it could be a guy from Michigan because they always leave camp as well. So yeah, honestly, it's completely wide open, but they will have to figure this out sooner rather than later, for sure.
Maybe Matt Rule comes out of nowhere from, I don't even know. Like, that could happen. I mean, but have you seen Auburn's new facilities that they opened up? I think it was like last week or something. Insane. Yeah. Insane. So I guess that's their one draw they had. The other coaching rumor I had is that Deion Sanders did open up and say that he is talking to USF and Colorado. There's been rumors about him with Auburn as well, but he kind of he said Auburn has not been talking to him, which doesn't surprise me. The guy just has no experience. In my opinion, I think USF is a good fit for him. He's from Fort Myers. He's like originally a Florida guy, so he can probably recruit well. Deion can recruit well anywhere. But I think it's good for him to do that interim group of 5 team before he moves up to a power 5 after that. I think people are trying to jump the gun too much saying, oh, Deion should go to Auburn, Deion should go to Georgia Tech. Let's get him into the FBS first and see how he does in a group of 5. I don't think he would do well going straight to power 5.
Yeah, you see that happen, when you saw Scott Frost jump from UCF to Nebraska, despite it being his alma mater. It's just a different game, and that's still, FBS. So him going from, whatever he's in right now to like at USF would be a great experience to see if he's actually can handle it. And again, I don't think he's ready for an Auburn job, even the Colorado job. They're still Pac-12. That's still a really competitive job. So I think the smart move for him would be to go to UCF. Well, actually, for him, the smart move would be wherever's paying you the most. If he can get to Auburn somehow, then sure, he's going to do it. But the smart move as a athletic director, as a school, is to let him test the waters with a little bit bigger school than what he's used to, and then finally we can make that jump to Power 5. But I think it's way too soon for him to even talk about the Auburn job and the, Colorado job, the Nebraska job, or anything like that.
I mean, I'll just say this. He used to be, so before he was the head coach at Jackson State, he was an assistant coach for his kids' high school team at Trinity Christian in Dallas. And I grew up in Dallas, so you would hear some stuff. He wasn't even a good high school coach or known as a good high school coach. So I think we're kind of hyping it up a lot because of the name, which is fine. It's Deion Sanders. He has been doing well. His team this year is undefeated, but the HBCUs have some weird thing where they don't play in the FCS playoffs. They have like their own HBCU championship between the HBCU conferences. If that makes sense, I found that out a few weeks ago. It just doesn't make sense to me why they can't play with everyone else in the FCS. But I don't know if he's like that good of a football coach, really. Again, I think if he goes to USF, we'll actually see, because who knows? He could get the shit beat out of him in the American Conference, and then we all stop talking about how great Deion is, and we'll realize it's just a name. But yeah, I mean, I've covered all my topics. I have one FSU rant I was going to do, but I'll let you say anything you got first.
Yeah, I'll just say my last right now until next week. This is going to be my final playoff prediction, and it's going to be extremely controversial. It's going to be gross, but just bear with me. And when this happens, this will be, just remember that I'm the one who told you this. So I'm taking Georgia at 1, obviously. I'm going to take the winner, Ohio State, Michigan at 2. I'm going to say it's Michigan because Michigan's going to beat the shit out of them. Now bear with me. I'm going to take Clemson at 3. And then I'm going to take the loser of Michigan, Ohio State. So Ohio State at 4. And that's going to be my playoff. Georgia, Michigan, Clemson, Ohio State. It's going to sound gross putting Clemson in there and 2 Big Ten teams, but that's what it's going to be. And I'm fairly confident, and I love it. I think that's extremely controversial, but it's extremely realistic. I don't think TCU wins a conference championship, so I think they get a loss. I think Clemson's going to win out, especially how North Carolina played. And then I think USC either loses to Notre Dame or to Oregon. So if TCU or USC loses, then the door's wide open for a Clemson or for a 1-loss Michigan, Ohio State, or God forbid, a Bama. Right. So I think a lot's going to happen, and I just think that seems very realistic in my mind.
I'm going to one up you here and make it more controversial. I like your top 3. I love Clemson in, and I'll get to that in my, like I said, I have FSU rant. I love Clemson in. I'll put Bama in at 4 over Ohio State just because of strength of schedule. I think that'll kill them in the end. I think that'll kill both 1-loss Big Ten non-conference champions teams. Just because the committee has made that message pretty clear over the past few weeks. But other than that, I love Clemson in, and I'll just transition to what I was going to talk about. FSU finally has a chance, somehow still has a chance at making New Year's Six Bowl if Clemson makes it into the playoff, because they're probably going to be that second best ACC team sitting there after UNC lost and they've dropped down. And then you need Notre Dame to lose because they also get ACC bowl tie-in. So I need USC to win until the Pac-12 championship, get Clemson there into the playoff, and then Florida State's looking pretty in the Orange Bowl, and I'm all happy. So I'm the biggest Clemson fan the next few weeks. That's why I love that you put them in, and we're on the same page. But yeah, I mean, that's all I got for this week. Any last things, or is that it?
No, that's all I got. Big game in Columbus. I will be, nervous as all get out until that game and until probably the game's over. So go blue. But yeah, we have a lot. Big rivalry week, super exciting. And yeah, a lot of playoff implications on the line this weekend.
Awesome. Well, for me, go Noles. Hopefully we beat the shit out of UF. Have a good one, guys. We'll see you next week when we're talking conference champions.
Happy Thanksgiving as well.
Sorry. Happy Thanksgiving.